answers? I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Yeah, and this week on the Big Conspiracy segment, we're going to talk about the JFK assassination. Now, Larry, you love this topic, right?
I do. I am a big fan of the JFK assassination. Now, do you get nervous talking about this, Mike Dell?
No, Larry, no.
You dig too deep, and
yeah,
you're in that hole.
That's right. Yeah, I'm hardly an expert or, a leading researcher in the field, but the proof's out there. It's not hard to find. People just got to look. But basically, of course, JFK, he was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963, at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Now, Larry, obviously, I know you think there's a conspiracy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way it's not a conspiracy.
Yeah, and that's what's so perplexing when you really go back and look into it, how people can still doubt there was one. Even in 1976, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, they held another investigation into the Kennedy assassination, and even they found that they concluded, and I quote, President Kennedy was probably assassinated as the result of a conspiracy.
Yes.
Now this is this is the House, but they wouldn't go out and say like there's more than one shooter or that who was involved. But they said right there, the government even said it. Yeah, there's probably a conspiracy. Yeah, that's enough.
There's 5 words that go ahead and sum up that this was a conspiracy, Mike Dell. Do you know what those 5 words are?
Back and to the left.
Exactly. There is no way that a man who gets shot from behind is going to jerk his head backwards.
Yeah, they try and say, well, it's the exit wound and the force of the exit. The skull blew open and forced his head back. That's just nonsense.
No, that's just...
But they tell people this, and people believe it. Now, you ask yourself, why do you believe this?
Maybe people want to believe it, I think.
Yeah, it's just... Well, Hitler, it goes back to Hitler in Mein Kampf. He said they tell a big lie and people will believe it.
Yeah.
Tell little lies, and they're not going to believe it because they all commit little lies. But people don't believe someone could be so brazen and so bold to tell such a bold-faced lie and get away with it. Yet that's what our government does to us all the time.
All the time.
And people need to start waking up. But the trouble with any conspiracy, even one as blatant as JFK, is people start arguing over the details of it, like how it worked. And then everyone just gets very confused, and they start arguing amongst themselves and name-calling, and it's just pitiful. But the point to remember here, folks, there was a conspiracy. That's the big thing. And the proof. So we need proof. How can we prove the conspiracy? Obviously back and to the left.
Yeah.
His head moved back and to the left. The killing shot came from the front, from the grassy knoll. It hit him above the right temple, and it blew out the back of his skull. Now, the government would have you believe that his skull was intact, and the back of his skull was not damaged. But every doctor who saw Kennedy, who saw his body, reported that the back right portion of his skull was blown apart, completely gone. And, of course, they don't tell you that in the Warren Commission. They doctored that up. But go back and you can find tape of the actual doctors saying this. And at the end of it, we'll give you some resources where you can investigate stuff. But, yeah, so back and to the left is the big thing. That proves it right there. And but beyond that, also the magic bullet theory. Now, Larry, are you familiar with the magic bullet theory?
Yes, I'm very familiar with the magic bullet theory.
Yeah, the Warren Commission, which was the investigation in the Kennedy assassination. And oddly enough, it was led by Allen Dulles, former chief of the CIA there, who is a man who Kennedy fired from the CIA and who hated Kennedy and who Kennedy hated. Yet when they needed to put together the Warren Commission, Lyndon Baines Johnson there, the great guy that he is, put Allen Dulles in charge of it. That's odd, right?
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, a little weird. So the Warren Commission, the official story is that Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald, was in the 6th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository, and he took 3 shots. The first one missed, because they have to admit that, because a man named James Tegg, just a citizen there, he was on across the street on the underpass, and a bullet hit the cement there, and he got caught in the face with some shrapnel, and he was wounded. So, hey, they know, hey, that's a bullet. Can't hide that. So they're kind of screwed, because there's only 3 shell casings in the sniper's nest in the school book depository. So that's one shot down. So now they only got 2 bullets to account for all the wounds in President Kennedy and Governor Connolly there, who was riding in the seat in front of him. Kennedy was shot in the back. There is a wound in his throat. He was shot at least once in the head. Connolly was shot in the back. His wrist was shattered by a bullet, and his thigh also had a bullet wound. So that's all those wounds for 2 bullets. And obviously the one that hit Kennedy in the head, that was the kill shot. You can't say, well, that did more damage, because that was blatant what that did. So they need 1 bullet to account for the back wound to Kennedy, and then they argue that the throat wound was an exit wound. That bullet went into Governor Connolly's back, through his torso, exiting his chest, went through some ribs, by the way. Then it shattered his right wrist, where he dropped his hat. He was holding his hat. He dropped his hat. Then the bullet changed direction again and shot into his left thigh.
Yes.
Not only that. Yeah, not only that, but the bullet somehow worked itself out of his left thigh, got entangled in his clothes, and showed up on a stretcher in the hospital in pristine condition.
Pristine.
And that's why they call it the magic bullet theory, because no bullet could act like that. Yet they tell you this, and people still believe it. They say it with a straight face, and yet people still believe it. Ask yourself why. Like, what is wrong if you actually? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, the big thing is, in order for that magic bullet theory to even have any chance of being real, is that they're saying that the wound in Kennedy's back was an entry wound, and the exit wound was in the throat. And that's just not true. Because while the Warren Commission says the wound in Kennedy's back was at the base of the neck, that's a lie. And Gerald Ford even admitted later that he lied about where the location of the wound. Go back and look at the photos there. The actual wound in his back was 5.5 inches below the collar, and it matches up in the coat and the shirt. It matches up to that wound. So it couldn't have come out through his throat because of the angle of the shot. Yet they still lie to you, and they just move up the wound and say it's in the base of the neck, and that is just not true. And they say, well, when he hunched over, his coat and his shirt bunched up. Yeah, that's right. They bunched up 5.5 inches, and they bunched up uniformly in those 5.5 inches. Yeah, that's what happened. And that's just, again, ridiculous. And it's a bold-faced lie. And they don't care, because obviously no one seems to care. Our country's still here how many years later now, and no one seems to care, But they're lying to your face. All right, anyway, what were you going to say, Larry?
I don't remember.
Oh, all right. And also, another big part of the magic bullet theory is that the bullet that goes in Kennedy's back supposedly comes out his throat and then hits Connolly in the back. But here's the thing. Connolly, if you watch the Zapruder film, Kennedy's already been hit. Connolly turns around and looks behind him. And
yes.
When he does, he's still holding his hat in his right hand.
Yep.
If that bullet had shattered his wrist in the nerve there, the ulnar nerve, he would have dropped the hat. And it did not happen yet. It happens later, after another shot hits Connolly. And right there, that proves conspiracy, because only 3 shots. If you have any more than 3 shots, there's a conspiracy. There's more than one shooter.
Well,
so that's all you need. Right there, that proves it. But there's actually many more, there's much more physical evidence to prove that there are more shots fired. But you wanted to say something, Larry?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, who wanted Kennedy dead?
Well, we'll get into that in 1 second. But
okay.
I wanted to run down a few more of the shots because, like I said, there's far more than just 3 shots, and you only need 4 to prove the conspiracy. Once again, Connolly's shoulder and thigh wounds. That makes 5, possibly 6 shots. Kennedy received 2. He actually received 2 almost simultaneous shots to the head. And if you go down and we'll talk about it a little later, but if you break down this Zapruder film again, his head moves forward an inch, and then he gets shot again, and it goes back into the left. And I'll tell you who shot him in the back of the head and how they did it and whatnot. So that would be, brings the total up to about 7 shots. The limo had damage in the windshield, and it looks like a bullet hit the edge of the top of the limo as well. Now, there's still debate whether there was a clean bullet hole in the windshield. whether it just caught shrapnel on the inside of the window and it cracked, or whether there's a clean through and through bullet hole. Because there were witnesses on the scene who said they saw a clean bullet hole. And there are photographs from Dealey Plaza that show damage to the window, but it's tough to tell whether it's a crack or a bullet hole. Obviously, if it's a bullet hole, that means someone shot from the front.
Right.
And a lot of people think it was a clean bullet hole, and someone shot through the windshield and hit Kennedy in the throat, and that's where he got the wound in the throat, that was actually an entry wound. And Kennedy, the knot on Kennedy's tie, on the left side of his tie, has a nick in it. Like it looks like a bullet hit it going into his throat. And the doctor who performed the emergency tracheotomy on Kennedy said that there was an entry wound in his throat from a bullet before he did the tracheotomy there. So who knows? That's when these things get all confusing, is like, who knows what happened, and it's not our job to really say exactly what happened. But the truth is, all we need to prove is there was conspiracy, and once again, there's clearly more than 4 shots fired. A bullet was also dug out of the ground by a manhole cover and across the street. Again, witnesses to it testified to that. Many more witnesses said a shot hit a highway sign, and that sign was taken down the next day and never returned. So obviously something was going on there. Something was fishy. But by even conservative estimates, at minimum 6 shots fired. At most, people can sometimes say as many as 13. But the point is there was more than 3. And that's
proves
simple.
the conspiracy.
Yeah, that's it. Done and done.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that's all we need to know. So now, back to the left, the amount of bullets in evidence. So now what we need to figure out, as Larry asked, who wanted Kennedy killed. And that's the thing. It's kind of like in do you remember Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express, where like everybody did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened here. First, the central bankers. We talked about this before on the show. But Kennedy was trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve. He wanted to print silver-backed currency and takes that out of central banking. And of course, the bankers are the guys who really run the planet. And they don't want that because, and we've talked about this in the past as well, but every president who's opposed central banking has been assassinated. And Kennedy was just the most recent one. So once he pissed off the central bankers, they're like, yeah, whatever. He's gone. You know, we got to take him out. Next, the Texas oil men and their good buddy LBJ, who was vice president at the time. They didn't like Kennedy because he wanted to abolish something called the oil depletion allowance that allowed oil men to reduce their corporate income tax by roughly 27.5% of the value of their crude oil. Now, if he got rid of this little depletion deal there, it would cost the Texas oil men about $300 million per year. So they weren't happy about that.
Huh, see, I never heard this angle.
Yeah, and these are guys like, I'm blanking on his name.
J.R. Ewing?
Yeah, J.R. Ewing, H.L. Hunt. And, of course, the Bush family. You know, they're down in the big oil and stuff. But all the oil men in Texas, they weren't happy with Kennedy. And LBJ was their boy. And they're like, hey, what's going on here? Why can't Kennedy, you get Kennedy to do what we want? So that was a trouble with Texas oil men. Number 3, the military-industrial complex, because JFK wanted to get us out of Vietnam. And again, this is LBJ, because he was big into Bell Aviation and Bell Helicopters, which provided most of the helicopters there for the Vietnam War. LBJ made a fortune off the Vietnam War, and so did everyone else involved in the military-industrial complex there. So they wanted Kennedy dead. And number 4, you had the Mafia, because JFK and RFK were cracking down on the Mafia. And this was a especially bitter pill to swallow for Sam Giancana, because he helped get Kennedy elected in Illinois, and he was pulling strings for him all the time to get him into the White House, and then Kennedy starts cracking down on him. So he was kind of upset about that. And then you have, of course, the CIA. Because everything really starts back in the day, back in the Bay of Pigs in April 1961. The CIA basically invaded Cuba on their own and tried to overthrow Castro without Kennedy's approval. And that, needless to say, angered Kennedy quite a bit. And that's when he fired Allen Dulles and a few other guys from the CIA. And he said that he wanted to splinter the CIA and just get rid of it entirely and make it just an intelligence gathering operation and nothing more. And that really angered everyone in the CIA, because their pet project at the time was getting rid of Castro. They wanted to kill Castro, and they were actually running paramilitary operations into Cuba, basically terrorism. Look up Operation 40 and we can read all about it. So the CIA was running all these anti-Castro stuff, and they were trying to get into Cuba, and Kennedy told them to shut it all down. You can't be doing that, stop it. So they were always at odds. And after he fired Dulles, he made it clear that he wanted to get rid of the CIA, and the CIA wasn't going to have any of that. Then in 1962, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the CIA once again went against Kennedy's orders and nearly got us into a nuclear confrontation with Russia. So this just made Kennedy hate the CIA all the more. And so there you go, Larry. There was the big five people that wanted him dead, and they all basically conspired together to kill JFK.
Huh. Jeez. That's just such a you know what I mean? That's just such a large group of people working together, though. You know what I mean? It's
well, basically the oil men funded it, and the bankers funded it. The CIA and the mob worked together to get the shooters involved. And people don't realize this, but the CIA and the mob were working together since about 1942 on several clandestine secret operations. And the mob was involved in trying to kill Castro. They were using a lot of their people. So they've been working together for years. This isn't like what would the mob and the CIA be doing working together. Well, we'll look into it. Read up on it. It's there.
Wasn't Castro a CIA operative?
Yeah, I've never looked into that at all, but I find that hard to believe, seeing how they really wanted to get him so bad.
Yeah, I've heard he was. I heard he was a CIA.
Hey, at this point, I don't question anything. I question everything because it's all believable. The deeper you look into this stuff, it's all just ridiculous. And they lie about everything, so just, I'll believe anything at this point, because who knows?
No, does that scare you?
No.
Okay.
Because this is all just illusionary stuff, Larry. This is all fake,
It's all, when it all boils down to it, it's all meaningless, right?
Yeah, when you get into the true nature of reality and existence, it's all illusionary. But anyway, but we also got to understand there were two earlier attempts on JFK's life. Chicago, November 2nd, 1963, JFK had to cancel a trip and his motorcade at the last minute because Chicago's Secret Service uncovered a four-man plot to kill Kennedy. One of the men was an ex-Marine, just like certain Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yes.
So they had their patsy in place already. Tampa, Florida, November 18th, 1963. Kennedy was warned of another plot to assassinate him, and this time it involved a young man with connections to the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Sounds familiar. Again, just like Lee Harvey Oswald. They had their patsy in place. Except this time JFK went ahead with the motorcade and even stood up in the limo during the when he was driving around there to show he wasn't afraid. Because he had to give an important speech that night because Kennedy and the CIA, they were trying to get a coup going on in Cuba and to overthrow Castro. And in Kennedy's speech in Miami that night, he was going to put in certain lines, or I should say certain lines were put into the speech that were code for the coup leader down in Cuba to tell him that everything's all good, we got your back, go forward with the plans. So he had to give that speech, and he's a brave dude, that Kennedy. He says, I'm not backing down, we're going to do it. And he even stood up in the limo there to prove it. And so that's what you got to put this in perspective. It's kind of, once again, it's like the Cobain thing. You got to realize in Italy that was an attempt on his life, just like here in Chicago and Tampa, they're making attempts on his life already. So when people warned him not to go to Dallas, they said, don't go to Dallas. It's crazy down there with the oil men and everything. Just stay out of Dallas. But he did it anyway. So that brings us to what really happened on November 22nd in Dallas. Now, Larry, do you have any questions about anything so far?
No, but I'm a little skeptical when you start comparing JFK to Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, sorry, but it just puts it in perspective. Like, you got to look at the whole context. Don't just look at what happened November 22nd. Look what happened before it, and realize there were other attempts going on to get him, Yeah. And look at the similarities between Dallas and Tampa and Chicago, and it spells itself out. And again, don't believe anything I say. That's the whole point of this conspiracy segment. You don't have to believe me. I'm not saying I'm right, but hopefully it inspires you to investigate on your own and find out for yourself.
But I believe you're right, though.
Yeah. All right. Now, November 22nd in Dallas, Dealey Plaza, he turned onto the limo, drove down Houston Street there, and turned left onto Elm. And at roughly 12:30 was when all the shooting started. So what really did happen there? First of all, Oswald didn't shoot anybody. He wasn't involved at all. He was just an innocent patsy, completely innocent. He had a job in the school book depository there. Witnesses placed him on the second floor of the school book depository, literally a minute before the shooting happened. And there's even a photo that exists that seems to show Oswald in the doorway of the building when the shooting's happening. Now, this became an Associated Press guy named James Altgen took the photo, and a lot of people at the time brought this up and said, hey, it looks like Oswald there in the doorway. And the Warren Commission said, no, that's a guy named Billy Lovelady, who also was an employee of the School Book Depository, and he does bear a striking resemblance to Lee Harvey Oswald. But there are two problems with the Billy Lovelady thing. One, other witnesses were there, and they testified that Lovelady was there in the doorway at the time, but the problem was he was sitting down the whole time. And also, Lovelady was wearing a red and white striped shirt. In the photo, the man is wearing a blue shirt with a white undershirt underneath, and that's exactly what Oswald was wearing that day. So whether you believe it was Oswald or not, it certainly is an interesting fact about the story. You can, search for that photo, and you can find it. But there are witnesses that place Oswald on the second floor minutes before the shooting, and there are also witnesses who saw two men on the sixth floor of the School Book Depository, one white man and one black man. And who are those guys? I don't know. But so Oswald wasn't there. He wasn't in there at all. And but there were shots fired from the School Book Depository, because the thing is, they were supposed to shoot him as he was making the bend onto Elm Street. That's why they were positioned. If you look at Dealey Plaza and the map of Dealey Plaza, that's the obvious position where someone from the School Book Depository would shoot from, is when the limousine is coming and turning the corner. That's when JFK is exposed. But apparently they missed. And so then that meant the second team of shooters had to come into play. And those would be guys in the Dow Tex building across the street, in the third floor window of the Dow Tex building. Now, once again, look at a map of Dealey Plaza. The third floor window there, you get a straight-on view right down Elm Street. You're looking right at the back of the limo as it's going down. And it's believed that a man named Charles Nicoletti was the shooter in that window. In that same James Altgen photo where you can see the Oswald in the doorway, if you get the big version of it, you can actually see in the third floor window of the Dow Tex building, it looks like a guy with a rifle. You can actually see it. And
now, what's this guy's name again? James what?
Altgen, Altgen. And
right.
Go look up that, and that'll be very entertaining for you. But yeah, the Dow Tex building is definitely where the shots came from behind. I think that's the shot that hit him in the back, and later in the back of the head right before the kill shot from the grassy knoll. Now, the third team of shooters was on the grassy knoll, and there may have just been one man, a guy named James Fowles. Now, some people don't believe that he is telling the truth here, but he says he was the guy on the grassy knoll that shot Kennedy. And it's kind of compelling. He was a young mob killer at the time. I think he was only 21. And he says he shot Kennedy with a Remington XP-100 Fireball gun. And he used a wax-tipped mercury round that exploded on contact. And he says it was a custom round that he carried. And his trademark as a hitman back in the day there, he said he was a cocky kid, 21-year-old kid. He would take the shell casing of a shot and he'd bite it and leave it behind as his trademark. And it sounds, kind of ridiculous that he do that, but he said, I'm a kid and I did it. Well, here in 1987, someone found a shell casing behind what would have been the fence line there in the grassy knoll in Dealey Plaza, and they dated it back, and they found it was because it was underground a little bit under some dirt. They figured out that it really would have been there since 1963, and when they told James Fowles about this, he said, well, if it's my shell casing, the end will be oval because I bit it and it would have teeth marks in it. So they went back to the guy who found the shell and they said, hey, is there anything unusual about the shell? And he says, yeah, it is bit. There are teeth marks on the shell. So take that for what it's worth. But it would sound like that's a pretty solid claim that he's the shooter from the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
And his boss, he was a mob guy. His boss was Charles Nicoletti, the guy who was in the Dow Tex building. And Charles Nicoletti was under Sam Giancana. So this all goes back to Sam Giancana. And there's also a guy down there named Jimmy Roselli, who's probably also another shooter. He could have been the other shooter. He could have been the guy up in the School Book Depository, or it could have been any number of people mentioned. See, that's the thing. We get bogged down in the details of what exactly happened, and then everyone argues about that, and then they lose track of the fact, wait, we're arguing over something that we don't need to argue. All we need to say is that it was a conspiracy, and it's proven, done. Now, the grassy knoll, the interesting thing about the grassy knoll, if you go back and you watch the films and the photos, when it happens, there's like about 30 seconds where people are stunned at what's going on, and then everybody runs to the grassy knoll, because that's what they saw the shot coming from there. that's where they saw the kill shot come from. They saw it, they heard it, so everybody there runs to the grassy knoll because they're trying to get the guy that just killed the president. But, of course, no one mentions that everybody there, like I think 56 witnesses testified to saying that they saw someone shoot from the grassy knoll. But again, the government says, oh, we don't need to hear that. We'll just tell them our story and they'll believe it. That's the interesting thing. People who are actually eyewitnesses to all these events, any of these events where there's conspiracy involved, the eyewitnesses always tell one story, and then the government tells another, yet people still believe the government story.
Like 9/11.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that sometime as well. And by the way, the same people behind this are the same people behind 9/11, and they're the same people that are still running our government today. And it's very shameful. Now, we're quickly running out of time already, Larry, and there's so much more to go. But, so some people say there was even a fourth team of shooters, and they mentioned maybe a drain further up the street. They were in a drain under the street there.
Like a manhole?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's possible. It seems a little far-fetched, but people say they heard an echo with the shot, like it sounded like it came from under the ground. Then some say there's a rifleman in a truck across the street because they seem that, once again, there's a photo that seems to suggest this. Then there's also a photo that shows a guy with a badge behind a fence in the grassy knoll, but James Fowles says he wasn't aware that there's another shooter back there, although some people do report seeing two men behind the fence. See, this is where it gets all confused, and then people think, oh, you're just crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. But again, there's more than 4 shots fired, so that's all we need to worry about. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald, Larry, once again, he was completely innocent. He was actually an FBI agent. He was an FBI informant for J. Edgar Hoover. He was informant number 179, I believe. And there's actually records he was getting paid $200 a month as an FBI informant. Because if you follow Lee Harvey Oswald's history, he went to Russia, and which wasn't easy to do back then, and he married a Russian lady, and then he came back and moved back here. And his movements were very odd for someone who just came out of the Marines. But basically, his job was to infiltrate those anti-Castro Cuban forces that the CIA was running, like Operation 40 and all that other stuff. So that's what he was doing for the FBI, because Hoover and the CIA, they didn't get along, and Hoover was trying to stick it to everybody in the government, basically. So he got Oswald in there to infiltrate the CIA, and then Oswald was ratting out CIA to the FBI, and the CIA found out he was the rat. And that's why they set him up as the patsy, because they were sticking it to J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, and they're saying, see, we got your boy. And now what are you going to do about it, you know? But, so he was an FBI informant infiltrating the CIA, and that's why he was set up as the patsy. See how that works? See how that works? Yeah,
I do see that.
But, again, he was seen on the second floor lunchroom minutes before the shooting. I already talked about the Billy Love lady. And Oswald went back to his boarding house there after the assassination, and then he went to a theater, movie theater. He was apprehended in a movie theater, and they always say he killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. He didn't kill Tippit. That was nonsense again. Tippit was actually involved somewhat. He had some role in this conspiracy. Not sure exactly what he had to do. But if you follow his actions earlier that day, he did a lot of peculiar things. He was patrolling in the area around Oswald's house the whole time, even though that wasn't his assignment for the day. Roughly around 1 o'clock, he was seen pulling in front of Osgood's house and honking his horn. Then he took off. He went to a record store, made what witnesses described as a frantic phone call, got back in his car, drove back towards Oswald's house. At one point, he stopped the car of an insurance salesman there. He just pulled in front of the car, stopped it, ran out, checked the guy's car to see if there's anything or anyone in the back seat, then without saying a word, got back in his car, drove back again towards Oswald, and that's when, at some point in there, he was stopped on the street and got in an altercation and was shot dead. Now, it wasn't Oswald that killed him, but Tippett's role is confusing, and people argue over this again. Was he supposed to get Oswald out of town, or was he the guy who was supposed to kill the patsy? And there's still some debate over. And then who killed Tippett? Well, once again, James Fowles, the guy who says he's on the grassy knoll, he claims that he told Charles Nicoletti there, that he was worried about Oswald because they had met Oswald in the days before Dallas. And he said, well, Oswald can connect me to you, and then we could all be screwed up, so I'm not comfortable with Oswald. So Nicoletti said he talked to Sam Giancana about it. So then Fowle says that a mob guy was sent to kill Oswald, and maybe that's who Tippett ran into, and they got into it, and then the guy killed Tippett, and then he went. Because again, the witnesses to the Tippett killing, they all tell different stories. And the one lady who the government used, Helen Markham, her initial description of Tippett's killer is nothing like Oswald at all. But then she went and picked him out of a lineup. Of course, Oswald protested, vehemently that the lineup wasn't fair because it was just him and a bunch of teenage kids, and he has a black eye, and because he had been in a scuffle with the police. So obviously, she was probably influenced a little bit to pick Oswald out of the lineup. So that's how Oswald got fingered for killing J.D. Tippett, but he didn't do that either. So does that make sense, Larry?
Yeah.
So why did Oswald go to the theater? Well, he went to the theater to meet his CIA contact, and I had his name here somewhere. I think it was like David Phillips or something. David Atlee Phillips, and that was the CIA contact. He went to the movie theater to meet him because he thought he was going to be leaving the U.S. on a trip to Cuba for a mission for the anti-Castro people. But when the police came in, he realized he had been framed or double-crossed or something, and he got in a scuffle with the police because he was carrying a gun, and he didn't, he thought he was in trouble for that. So he did get in a scuffle with the police, and the police hit him, and they brought him in. And Larry, I think we have an audio clip of Oswald real quick when he was in prison with the police. It's interesting to just hear him talk. Play that real quick.
Yep. Let me get it real quick. There we go.
People have given me a hearing without legal representation or anything.
You shoot the president?
I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
Why shoot the president?
I didn't shoot anybody, sir. I haven't been told what I'm here for.
You have a lawyer?
No, sir, I don't. I like some legal representation. These police officers have not allowed me to have any. I don't know what this is all about.
Kill the president?
No, sir, I didn't. How'd you get the plane? Sir?
You shoot the president?
I work in that building.
Were you in the building at the time?
Naturally, if I work in that building, yes, sir.
Back up, man. Come on, man.
No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I live in Missouri. I'm just a patsy.
That's right, he's just a patsy. And when they arrested Oswald, in his wallet, he also had the name and phone number of James Hosty, which was a FBI agent in Dallas. So obviously something was up. He wasn't just some random loner who was he was.
No.
Yeah. All right, and Oswald, of course, was shot 1 hour before his full press conference. He was supposed to have a big press conference there, and he was shot by Jack Ruby, and so before he could talk. Now, Jack Ruby was tied into the mob, and he also had connections with Nixon and lots of other stuff. He was crooked as they come. Interestingly enough, Ruby was also in Chicago when Kennedy was supposed to get assassinated up there. And apparently the plan all along was that the patsy was supposed to get killed by police, and if the patsy somehow managed to live, then Jack Ruby would have to kill him. And they set up that nice little transfer there where they lead Oswald out. If you've never seen that film, please go watch it. The police just lead him right out and don't stop Ruby at all. He just walks right up and shoots Oswald. Now, whether or not that shot killed Oswald doesn't matter because they had an ambulance sitting right there ready to go. They loaded Oswald in the ambulance and took him away, and he wasn't coming out of that ambulance. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
But we also have a clip of Jack Ruby because you know who else knew it was a conspiracy? Jack Ruby. He even admits it. Do you have that clip, Larry?
Yes.
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. The people that have so much to gain and have such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions, yeah?
Yes.
That's right. And Jack Ruby said because growing up, didn't you always hear, Larry, that Ruby was just so upset that Oswald killed Kennedy that he had to kill Oswald?
Yeah, that's what you hear.
Yeah, that's not true at all. In fact, he knew Oswald, and apparently they were familiar with each other at least. No, he killed Oswald because he wanted to, in his own words, protect the American people from finding out about the conspiracy. He wanted them to, he wanted to protect the secrets and protect the American people from knowing how things really are. That's what he wanted to do. Yeah, so take that for what it's worth. Larry, we're already out of time. I'm not even.
I know.
Yeah, because we got to talk about Abraham Zapruder, the Three Tramps, Umbrella Man, and the Dark Complected Man. These are all great. But if you want to, maybe we'll talk about this some other time. I don't know. But go to YouTube. There's a guy over there called Gil Jesus. I believe his username is GJJ Dude or something. He's got hundreds and hundreds of videos from like news reports about the Kennedy assassination from the time. Also, there's a great movie called Evidence of Revision. I haven't even seen all 5 parts of it yet. Each part's like an hour and a half. But basically, they just show you the actual news coverage of the event at the time and eyewitness accounts. It's tremendous because it's not, it's not the government lying to you. It's how it actually happened and people talking and eyewitnesses. There's also a movie you can look up, JFK 2. It's very interesting. It ties everything in with the Bush family and how because we ought to do a special show on the Bush family sometime because they got all their fortune from dealing with the Nazis and running a Nazi bank. Look up that sometime. You'll be amazed at where the Bush family comes from. But so we'll do all this on another night. But there's just endless information out there. Just look for it. Look for it and read, and you'll learn the truth, and it's great. Now, Larry, we have a couple minutes here left, but I want to close the show and then play a clip of comedian Bill Hicks talking about JFK because I think it's very funny and it might help people.
Okay, I will do that. Do you even want me to play the Brass Bonanza?
Yeah, you know what? Let's just end with Bill Hicks because that'll be great. And when Hicks is done, we'll just, that's it. That's the end of the show. But this is Bill Hicks, comedian. This is 1993's Concert Revelations. He has a nice take on JFK. And thanks, Cousin Brandon, the Ed, and Jim Ivino. And that's it, Larry.
All right. Like I said, that sort of thing. And, Cousin Brandon, he lost to me tonight. And the Ed was here, and Jim Ivino. And don't forget about Craig Dodge. You stop by, Vertically Striped Radio. You could check him out on Blog Talk and verticallystripesocks.com. And we'll do it again next week. And until then, pass the gin, Governor.
Kennedy. I love talking about the Kennedy assassination because to me it's a great example of a totalitarian government's ability to, manage information and thus keep us in the dark any way they do. Oh, sorry, wrong meeting. Shit. That's the meeting we're having tomorrow at the docks. I love talking about Kennedy. I was just down in Dallas, Texas. You can go down there and to Dealey Plaza where Kennedy was assassinated. And you can actually go to the 6th floor of the School Book Depository. It's a museum called the Assassination Museum. I think named that after the assassination. I can't be too sure of the chronology here, but anyway, they have the window set up to look exactly like it did on that day, and it's really accurate, because Oswald's not in it. So, wow, that's good. Painstaking accuracy, It's true. It's called a sniper's nest. It's glassed in. It's got the boxes sitting there, and you can't actually get to the window itself. And the reason they did that, of course, they didn't want thousands of American tourists getting there each year going, no fucking way! I can't even see the road! Shit, they're lying to us! Fuck! Where are they? There's no fucking way! Not unless Oswald was hanging by his toes, upside down from the ledge. Either that or some pigeons grabbed onto him, flew him over the motorcade. Surely someone would have seen that. There was rumors of anti-Castro pigeons seen drinking in bars. Someone overheard them saying, coo, coo, coo. Unbelievable. And what's wild is people's attitudes in the States about it. Talking about Kennedy, people come up to me, Bill, quit talking about Kennedy, man. Let it go. It's a long time ago. Just forget about it. I'm like, all right, then don't bring up Jesus to me. back and to the left, back and to the left, back and to the left, back and to the left. Which, by the way, that action you see Kennedy's head do in the Zapruder film, caused by a bullet coming from up there. Yeah. I know it looks to the layman or someone who might dabble in physics. This action here would have been caused by a bullet coming from, well, up here. Did you see that? Did everyone see that? Yeah, but no. What happened was Oswald's gun went off, causing an echo to echo through the buildings of Dealey Plaza. And the echo went by the limo on the left, up into the grassy knoll, hitting some leaves, causing dust to fly out, which 56 witnesses testified was a gunshot, because immediately Kennedy's head went over. But the reason his head went over is because the echo went by the motorcade on the left, and he went, "What was that?" So there. We have figured it out. Go back to bed, America. Your government has figured out how it all transpired. Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control again. Here's American Gladiators. Watch this. Shut up. Go back to bed, America. Here's American Gladiators. Here is 56 channels of it. Watch these pituitary retards bang their fucking skulls together and congratulate you on living in the land of freedom. Here you go, America. You are free to do as we tell you. You are free to do as we tell you. Oh, good. Honey, I heard on the news that they figured out that the gun, what happened is that there is an echo and that Kennedy was asking Jackie what it was, and that's why his head flew up. Honey, what time's Gladiators on? Are we missing it?
Thank you very much.